Hey guys, Lisa Callaghy here to share with you a video on how to share your Whiteboard.fi whiteboards to your students and vice versa. There are different features to this sharing that I just want to go into a little detail for you guys, just to give you a quick overview on how that works. Because depending on your lesson, you might want to share your board in a different way. So let's get started. All right, here I am on the Whiteboard.fi homepage. When you go to this website, this is where you land. And my first video showed you how to create an account and how you share your whiteboard with your students via Zoom or Schoology, so that way they join your whiteboard. So just to recap, Whiteboard.fi is a whiteboard sharing free website, and no student data, no teacher data is collected because you never have to put in any data. You're just basically sharing what's going on at the moment, and then once you close out your Whiteboard.fi tab, everything is gone. Okay, so every time you come on here, you have to create a new class, your students join, you do what you need to do, and then you leave. So nothing is being saved, no information is being shared, and so forth. Everything is by code when they're joining. And yeah, so that's how that works. All right, so for this video, I'm just going to show you the different ways that you could share your whiteboard between you and your kids, or your students sharing it back to you. And yeah. All right, so here we are on the Whiteboard.fi homepage. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just jump over to a teacher who has already started her class. And she has a few students in her class right now, and you can see their whiteboards. So it's important to realize that, as you see, when your students first join your class, this is what it looks like. You're going to see your students' boards pop up here on your screen. Now, for you as a teacher, you have to think about how it is that you want to present your lesson. Is it a lesson that you want your students to watch you on a whiteboard do something? If that's the case, let me show you what you need to do. As a teacher, you would toggle my whiteboard, which now opens up your whiteboard as a teacher with all the tools that you have available that you can now start using on your whiteboard. And when your students, let me just draw something really quick so you can see. Just draw a circle. Okay. Now, if I want my students to see that, I have to direct them to toggle my whiteboard. So I'm going to pop over to one of my students' windows here where they're on part of my class. And you'll notice, well, how come my student is not seeing my whiteboard? That's because when students open up or when they first join your class, okay, and they're successfully inside, you can see your name at the top, that what students get automatically is their whiteboard. So you'll see right here, if a student was to draw a square, okay, and I toggle back to mine, I don't see that square on my whiteboard as a teacher. But if I scroll down, I can certainly see that my student drew a square on their whiteboard, right? So this is what I get to see as a teacher, and I get to see all of my students as they are manipulating their whiteboards here. But right now, I want my students to see my whiteboard. So it's important to tell your students to scroll up to the top and click on the green bar that says Toggle Teacher Whiteboard. So clicking on that green bar is going to pop down the teacher whiteboard, and now your students will be able to see everything that you do on your whiteboard. So this is a simple way for you to share with your students a whiteboard that they get to see what you're doing, and they get to hear you if you are on a live Zoom call. That's one way of using Whiteboard.fi. And Another way, continuing with this, where you have your students watching you perform a lesson on your whiteboard, what you can do is request your students to answer or respond to whatever it is that you put on your whiteboard on their whiteboard. So if I wanted them to tell me how many circles I have on my whiteboard, right? Oops. Okay. So I want my students to tell me how many circles they see on my whiteboard. Then on their whiteboard, delete this, they have to take their pencil or clicking on the A for a text box or asking for both if you'd like, right? They respond to your question. Now, as a teacher, what do you see? Let's go back. This is your whiteboard. This is what you shared with them. And now I get to see, let me refresh that. Oops, I guess I didn't. Oh, I got to hit, sorry. You have to hit return so that they can, because the text box was still active. They have to hit return so that it is created. And now you'll see what your students wrote on their whiteboard. Now, do other students get to see what other students wrote? No. Can they? Yes. If you share your screen in Zoom, so that means if I'm sharing this screen in Zoom for my students to see my page, then yes, they're going to see this. But there's no reason for me to share my screen in Zoom at this point because everything I wanted my students to see, they can already see on my whiteboard, right? Okay, so that's one way that you can use this tool. Another way is if you wanted your kids to manipulate or work with something that you've already put on your whiteboard, that you don't want them to have to copy onto theirs. You want to push out what's on yours, and they're going to write, either use what you have and move it around, right? Or they're going to write over it. Okay. So that's two different things that you can do. So we're talking about pushing out what's on your whiteboard and copying it over to all of your students' individual whiteboards. So either one, they can manipulate the items that you put on the whiteboard, or they could write over what you've put on the whiteboard. Okay, so that's two different things here, and you need to do two different things in order for that to happen. So let's start with the first one. You want your students to manipulate what you put on the whiteboard. So that means that they have to move stuff around. To do that, you come up to the push button here at the top right-hand side of your whiteboard, and you have three choices. For the purposes of kids being able to manipulate, you're only going to be dealing with the first two. The first one says push to all students, all pages. What does that mean? It means if you have multiple whiteboards with information that you want students to manipulate, so that means moving things around on the board, right? You would click on push to students, all pages. How do you even get extra pages? Scrolling down at the bottom of your whiteboard, you see a plus and a minus sign. So if you want to add boards to your whiteboard, you click on the plus sign and it's going to add boards. If you want to remove boards, you click on the minus sign and it will remove boards. But if you have multiple boards that you want your students to have all of them in one shot, where they have to manipulate, or it doesn't matter if they edit anything on your whiteboard, then that's what you're going to choose. The first option under push, all pages to students. You also have the opportunity to push just one page if you'd like. Again, we're talking about manipulating anything that's on your whiteboard, or it doesn't matter that they edit it. Push current page only, making sure you are selecting the page that you want to push out, and then you click on push current page only. Okay, so now that pushes out, and if you notice, my students have my page. Okay, so I just push that out. So now every student has that. And if I want to check that, obviously I can't go into their accounts. But if I look down at their whiteboards, I will see that all my students have what I just pushed out. Okay, if I wanted them to manipulate these, maybe in the solar system, if I had this diagrammed, whatever, you could push that out to your students. Now, the next thing that you could do is push it out, but you don't want them to manipulate it. You want them to write over it, okay? So let me just demonstrate here for you how a student can actually move your stuff around here. So if I wanted this to be manipulated, students can move it around, right? So that's that one. But if I didn't want them to move it around, I'm sorry, I wanted them to keep everything, but I want them to type over this and maybe label, right? I'm going to choose the third option under push that says push to students as background. You can only do that with one page at a time. Okay, so you can only push out one whiteboard page at a time for you to make it a background. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click on push to students as background, current page. So here's what's great about this. PDFs, PNGs, anything that you want to push out to your students that you want them to work on where they write over it, okay? That can be put on this whiteboard and then by a click of a button, pushed out to all your students. And here you can see, if I refresh my students' page, now they can't move this. If I click on this, sorry, if I click on my circles here, they can't be moved, right? But if I wanted students to type inside, click white. If I wanted them to type, okay, so now they're able to write over my images, write over my pictures, write over my PDFs on the whiteboard that I pushed out. One last thing for this video, and then my next video is going to go into all of your tools here, is if you wanted to, and let me just scroll down so you can see you can see what your students are doing. If you wanted to, number one, if you wanted to erase all of your students' whiteboards, okay, you come up to your little cog or your gear, and you can click on clear all student whiteboards. Okay, and now if you look down, all their whiteboards are clear. Okay, clear. All right, so you have that ability as well. All right, so this video was about how you can share your whiteboards and use your whiteboards in Whiteboard.fi. I hope this video helps you using this tool in your virtual classroom. All right, guys, have a great day.